You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with our returning guest, author, and Fika cohort, Brian Greiner. Brian is the author of... There's a list. Brian is the author of the Saga of Bob series, the A Cursed North series, and the Ascending Darkness series, as well as Haiku Cat. Brian's bio says that he enjoys experimenting with different writing tools and processes. And I quote, because I seldom quote Brian, some call it procrastination, but he prefers to call it research and professional development. Here at Fika, we're calling it artisan writing when those tools are pen and paper. The dictionary says that artisan means a person or company that makes a high quality or distinctive product in small quantities, usually by hand or using traditional methods. Brian creates distinctive products all the time as he plays with this idea or that. Often they end up in their friend's mailbox, creating a moment for that person that exceeds being tagged on social media or receiving a box from you insert the name of the store here. So today, with Brian's experience help, we're discussing and singing the praises of pen and paper, their beauty and the beauty they create, while also giving a nod toward the change kinetic or physical movement can make in the writing life or just life in general. Thanks for sharing both your experience with us today and the little gifts in the mail, Brian, and welcome back to Fika.
Hi, Vicky. It's always good to converse live so I can make a fool of myself in front of a larger audience.
It is my plan. Okay, that is my plan. Robin's already up here saying, Yep. Good morning, Vicky and Brian. Going to be an awesome show. Thank you, Robin, but I know that you like Brian more, so I'm learning to accept that.
Robin just wants to see drama.
Robin just
verbal sparring.
Drama.
Hi, Robin.
So not only do little packages come from Brian, but today I found out that I was going to get a package of books that Brian had on his shelf. His books from my little free library, which is always exciting. And I thought I would do what the kids are doing and do an unboxing. But then Brian said,
yep,
I really packed it full. Don't ruin a book. So here we go. I took care of the sides and I'm just going to do the front. I also took off the address because the last time I did this several years ago, I immediately got a message from Brian saying, you should take the address off, Vicky. So see, he's such a nag. Okay, maybe I want company, Brian. So here I'm going to go across the top and I don't want to break
any. As I told Vicky, I ruined an expensive book once because I was sure that I could handle the knife expertly.
Okay.
And I often can, but not always, as it turns out. So I've learned the hard way.
So to be extra careful. Brian is always careful. So we have the Saga of Bob.
Number two,
Dagger of Eons. Okay, and this is one of the smaller Bobs. Honestly, we could have fit just one of Brian's books in there, but someone's going to be lucky to get that. The Darkness Comes Reaping, the Ascending Darkness, number 2. They're shiny.
Yes, they're the gloss covers because matte covers typically don't get printed well.
Darkness Creeps Forth, a novel of the Ascending Darkness, and that's number 1 of that, right?
Yep.
Oh, and number 1 of the Werewolves of Winter, the Accursed North, number 1. I loved this book. So somebody's very lucky because they're going to. It's the whole set of Accursed
Yes,
No.
it's the
And
two
number
werewolves and the
so
and the two
somebody
Nancy Franklins.
right, somebody's going to be very lucky getting both of in that series. And the beginning of a novel, I was with all these twos coming up. The whole Ascending Darkness series, I was beginning to think that he was giving number twos so people would be forced to buy number ones. Not that I have a suspicious mind. So that is thank you, Brian, for that. And I will
You're
put
very welcome.
well, this is donated by the author, and please give a review.
Oh, I just want to point out that box,
Oh, I noticed that too.
it was an order of pens and ink,
It's from
Wonder Pens in Toronto. They're my pen and ink monger of choice. It's a husband and wife team, and they have a good stock. They'll answer questions even if you don't buy anything. But as I pointed out to Vicky, I buy too much.
I am just shocked at Brian this morning because he's usually I use Brian for these shows. Because it's usually very frugal. So he gives us, possibilities instead of dreams, all right, when we're doing anything practical like this. And then this morning he says, "What's money anyways?" And I'm like, okay, Brian, all right, who took you and where is the real Brian? So with this fake Brian this afternoon,
It's nice Brian instead of
this is nice Brian. The other Brian's pretty nice.
Nah.
Does this mean more expensive presents are forthcoming?
No. That's it for the decade.
I had to try, Brian. I had to try. No, I appreciate that because the mailing of books is very expensive, which is why I don't really suggest it often for authors to send me books for their little free library. But Brian did it without asking or permission, or he just went ahead and did it. Like, because he has free will or something. I don't know.
Almost so, right?
Let's get this back on track, Brian.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to pens, do you consider yourself a stylophile, a fountain pen enthusiast, or do you love all pens equally?
I didn't start being a fountain pen person. Years ago, when I was still working, I was always on the lookout for a good pen because I got tired of ballpoints, which are just, they get the job done, sort of, kind of, but they're all kind of garbage. So I started looking around and doing research, and as you know, I love doing my research, and came up with gel pens, and they work nicely. There, you can get some decent, inexpensive gel pens. And my favorite are the Zebra Sansa, 0.7 millimeter. They're just the right width for me. Some like them a little finer. But for general writing, I think a 0.7 works well because it's nice and dark. Goes onto most paper very nicely. And they're not very expensive. I mean, you can spend a god-awful amount of money, but, why? These Zebra Sansas work nicely. And then my wife knows someone who's really into pens. Like, will spend hundreds of dollars on one.
Oh, shame!
It's stupidity. Thousands. So anyway, she asked for one for Christmas, so I got her. It's what's called a Lamy. It's a Lamy Safari. And I have one here. And it's not expensive. So it came, and before wrapping, I decided to give it a try. And they're a nice pen. So
and it's in your drawer now?
No. I went and bought my own. Of course. I mean, I'm not going to share with my wife. What fool shares with his wife? Um, and then I got into it that way, going, this is really nice. If you're used to ballpoint pens, you have to physically apply pressure for the pen to work. And you can, this is a trope on all the TV shows, cops and detectives, where they'll take a notepad, run their pencil down on the page, and they'll see what was written. Well, that assumes that the bad guys used a ballpoint pen. If they used a fountain pen, there'd be no more traces.
But how many? So we are to assume from that the only good guys used fountain pens.
Higher class people, shall we say?
Maybe there's a Criminal Minds episode on it.
Yeah, without casting doubts on their ethics. No, it's just a nicer writing experience. So it's easier on the hand because you're not forcing the pen onto and through the paper. You're just resting it lightly and letting the ink flow.
So
it's a whole other. Yeah. Well, the gel pens are better than ballpoints, and fountain pens are even better than gels. And so since then, my wife and I just got intrigued because you can buy a gazillion different inks. Like, here's my box of inks. I emailed you a picture of this.
Yes, and I put it up, and we'll be going through those. But Robin, I'm going to get to your other questions, but this one is very apropos for today. Have you tried those glass fountain pens, Brian?
Thank you, Robin. As a matter of fact, yes, as of Monday, when my latest order came in from Wonder Pens in that box that Vicky showed you. And I tried it, and it's a different writing experience. It's interesting. Does a
glass pen work like a fountain pen? I'm trying to. Yeah. But it's glass.
But it's basically a point, and it's got spirals. It's where the ink goes in. So it's a dip pen, where you dip it in, and the ink is held and then gradually goes away. And it's got a fine, sharp glass point. So it's not only a pen; it's a dandy weapon.
In case someone wants to take your pen while you're using it.
In case you ever want a good multitasking writing tool. I've also got a couple of dip pens. I think of them as a modern equivalent of the old goose quill.
That's what I was just thinking when you were talking about the glass one that you have to dip as
it's a smoother experience than the steel dip pens.
Now, do you find that helps while writing poetry? Because we always see them writing poetry, and so you have to take time.
I have written whole letters to friends using my steel dip pen. And what's interesting is it's a very tactile experience because you get the scritch, and you can hear it. And it's a different feel from any other kind of pen. And if you press too hard, you get little ink splatters. Like if you look at photos of very old documents from the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries where they used the quill pens, you always had these little droplets sort of scattered around.
Right.
That's exactly what you get with the steel pens, especially if you use like a brown sepia ink. It looks like an old-time document. It's really nifty.
So we'll just Robin's just throwing them out here, and this is a very important question because it's something that I want to get into with Fika, but over time. But since you asked Brian because you love him most, the art of handwriting and language used to be very elegant back in the earlier 19th century. What do you think happened to this over the years, Brian?
Well, Robin, there's a really good book that talks about this very thing. Script and Scribble by Kitty Burke Flory. It isn't a very thick book, but it goes into the history of handwriting, the styles through the ages and into the modern era. The old timey is like the copper plate with all those swirls and whirls, and you'd spend like 10 times longer writing a letter. But that was often used for more formal documents. Whereas if you look at the day-to-day, it may have started with the fancy, elegant stuff. But for day-to-day stuff that people just wanted to get the job done, it became far more utilitarian or stripped down. But it still looked very good as compared to modern day. If you get a book on calligraphy style stuff, if it goes into the history, as they talk about this, but things like the italic was actually developed by scribes who had to take dictation, and it's a faster way to write. So it's a more utilitarian, whereas people that wanted to impress other people rather than simply getting the point across.
Well, I think
fancy flourishes.
There's actually, I think you can get hired now to do the invitations and that by people other than us, do it ourselves kind of people. Because they want it fancy, they want it even, they want it perfect and to look good and to come. And I think, Robin, we need to come back to those days. That's what I like to do. Send that letter, because being on the receiving end of some of Brian's gifts, all of Brian's gifts, but just the little ones, like this was the last one. And I was having a bitter day because it's hard to take away the bitter as you get older. And I got this little thing and it made me stop and read. And it took me away for a minute from this world. And even messy notes, I was trying to write out my notes to see how that worked today. And I was actually getting impatient with myself because it wasn't going fast enough. And I thought, no, we need to slow down here. The world is going too fast. So would like to encourage people to write letters again. Just not expecting people to write them back because not everybody has that time, but just taking that minute to slow down. And I'm thinking of an anecdote. There was a woman who donated some books to us, and she was talking about how her mother back in England didn't have a phone in yet. And this was a while, years ago. And so when they got the phone in for her, they gave her a call and they said, "Isn't it great to be able to talk?" And she said, I kind of missed the letters because I had time to sit and think about what you were saying. So, yeah, we're kind of missing some of that as time goes on, which doesn't mean that I'm going to give up my computer or even ballpoint pen anytime soon. There was another book, Brian, that I found really interesting. And on Fika with Vicky on Facebook, there's one of Brian's blogs with a bunch of links that he has found interesting. And one of the things he mentions is this book.
Yeah, The Social Life of Ink. Culture, Wonder, and Our Relationship with the Written Word by Ted Bishop. It's a thickish book. It's like a personal journey where he's one day it occurs to him, where does ink come from? And he actually traveled around the world looking at different places that made it, either simple or complex, and goes into what different inks are good for in the historical and modern worlds. And it's a fascinating book. It's got lots of references in the back and notes. So he explains what he did. He is a professor, so it's done with care. And
you mean he checked his facts?
Yeah, and not only that, but he lets you know where he got them from, so that people.
Yeah,
so,
that's
which is just as important.
And even
it's
reading
a
the back,
very, very readable book. It's almost like an adventure book.
And Because we nerds like our adventures too. They just have a different kind. He writes on the back, on the, the synopsis of the book. It says it's like very much about our culture and how life was before people could write. I mean, it's the same as the printing press. It would have that much of a change to society. So how this brought political power so that people could write out what they had to say and send it along. It divided people, it united people, it recorded history, and it led to murderous rivalries. So I guess that is where the adventure is. I want to read that. I want to read that book, Brian. I want to read that book. Stop making my reading list longer. We have to do. So we talked a little bit about pens, and Robin had a couple questions about how much Indian ink do you have in that container behind you? Bring the container out, Brian. Bring it out.
I just have the one bottle that my wife had in her drawer for like 30 or 50 years. And she said, here, you take care of it. As wives are wont to do.
I'm a wife. So, Brian, just settle down on the wife thing. Lynn, I don't know how you do it. If you're out there.
Because I bake. With chocolate. Yeah. This is just, I found the best way to take care of my ink.
Is for those who cannot see, there are many little bottles inside of a plastic, a small plastic tote, because it takes very little room to store a lot of the size of ink bottles.
I got 18 bottles of ink.
So what are your favorite inks, Brian?
Well, this India ink is from Schaefer. And you can probably tell by the label, it's like 40 or 50 years old. My favorite.
Well, that's an interesting question. Does ink have an expiry date?
Depends on the ink. India ink, I will not put into my pens because it's kind of corrosive to pens. So I wouldn't put it into any of mine. Favorite inks, my Higgins Eternal Sepia calligraphy ink is a very nice old-fashioned looking ink, and it's for dip pens because different pens require different viscosities and chemistries, which is a very nerdy rabbit hole to go down.
There are, for you people who don't know, and I didn't know, there are like magazines, giant bulletin boards on the internet, just like so much. People just love their pens, so they're not going anywhere. I don't think writing is going anywhere. But it's we're just here to suggest that it might be a little calmer, a little slower.
One I must mention, a new one from mine, Writer's Blood ink.
Because every book takes a writer's blood.
Oh yes, it's a deep, rich red. There was apparently a contest. People thought it'd be a funny thing to have an ink called Writer's Blood, so there was a contest and people voted for their favorite color, and that was it. And it's very
would have to. It would have to be.
Ochre from the same company is a kind of a nice, but it's more of a reddy kind of thing. If you want to go to Japanese inks, they have some fabulous inks. Hideously expensive and very reasonably priced, that whole range. The Asagao is a beautiful, beautiful blue.
You said, just for those saying, well, I'd like to try this, but it's a little pricey for me. You said that, okay, so you can get a bottle for as little as $18.
Yeah, $16, $18. The Diamine, which is 80 milliliters, that kind of a size, is like $18.
And it's a fairly good ink.
Yes, it is made in England, and it's a fabulous go-to ink. It really is. The French, J. Herbin, have some very nice inks. that go well. The Japanese have some very lovely inks.
And so this would go because you say you like to use the French paper. Because I asked how I am not a patient person out there, if you've noticed. So I asked how you prevent blotting because I have tried this before and I just get frustrated. And now that I'm
Use the
older,
proper paper. That's the short answer. Most North American paper is designed to work with ballpoint pens and ballpoint pen ink, and tends to feather, which means it spreads, and bleed, which means it goes through. When you try and use a fountain pen on it, but it's cheap. The better inks. A good quality. One way to look at it is the rag content. The higher the rag content, which is there's more linen in it, typically the better it is for fountain pen inks. And a good widely available paper that I found for that is resume paper. I've got my other stuff piled on it, but it's from Southworth, and it's called resume paper. I found it in Staples. It's not cheap, but it's not god awful expensive. A good, fairly inexpensive paper is get some regular paper meant for inkjets, because that's an ink.
right. So it soaks in the ink, and yes, that makes perfect sense.
It holds it properly, and it soaks in enough to dry. Because there are some cheap papers from China, very inexpensive, but their binding is done with plastic, and they're totally friggin' useless.
Disgust you. Your face made by saying they're bounded by plastic. How can you bind with plastic?
I have no idea. They figured it out, but it's not very good. It is, I'm not going to name the company that I got it from because I already wrote them some hate mail online and gave it a 1-star review saying it wasn't fit for purpose. But they were normally, I think for Christmas, they were like $20 for like a book. And then a month later, they were on sale for $6. And even at that, they were overpriced. So I basically use it as a throwaway book for just writing scrap notes in. Better notes, notebooks. Let me move this stuff over. One interesting one I found at the dollar store on Tuesday was for $1.75. A sketchbook, 40 sheets.
Oh, yeah, I see that there.
Yeah, and it's a thicker paper. It's not great, but for $1.75, hey, if you want something
to practice on, or just do the doodling, we'll get back to that. So back to the glass.
Just another one. A North American or an American manufacturer of good paper is True Red, which shocked me, and they come up with some very nice notebooks, which take fountain pen ink nicely. They come up with writing pads.
What better way to journal at the end of the day than to practice your fountain penning? And it, as we said, slows it down. And welcome, Tamara, to the show. Tamara, okay, we did talk about what type of ink would you suggest for that glass pen? Tamara would like to know. Thank you, Tamara.
I was actually looking at that on Monday and yesterday. This is my practice sheet with the glass pen. And it's using some nice French paper. I tried the Diamine Walnut, which is a new ink that I got. And it's not bad. I don't know if you can see it. But the thing with the glass pen is it starts very heavy flowing And then as you use up the ink, it gets fainter and fainter. It helps if you twist the pen every few words. So you use a different channel in the glass pen. And then it's not bad. A good one was the writer's blood. But the best of all really was the Higgins calligraphy ink, because it's meant for dip pens. So it's a more consistent look for the length of the paragraph and writes a lot with one dip.
And so every pen takes a little practice to get used to the handling of it and what pressure you should use and such.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the writing aspect.
And I should also point out that the nibs get worn according to how you use them. So in time, in a fairly short length of time, it becomes a personal nib that will be ruined with if anyone else uses your pen.
Oh, really? So there's a reason not to share. There's a reason.
Exactly. Oh, there's a very good reason.
Won't share, not just because of his personality profile.
Exactly.
But with purpose. This is the thing. Oh, Robin, now you say, Vicky, you are awesome too, but it's too little, too late.
Oh, Robin had another interesting question here
about the difference.
It's about making your own homemade pen ink. Short answer, yes. And after doing some research, like I always do, my response was hell no.
It's too much.
It's appealing in some ways in that you can use found materials and get some interesting colors. There's actually a book written by a guy in Toronto. It's from Toronto Ink Company, I think it's called. I didn't write that down. But he wrote a book about making your own pigments, basically, for inks or painting, based on his years of trial and error. It's basically boiling stuff on the stove, making hideous smells. But there's basically two types of ink. There's pigments and dyes, and then there's stabilizing agents, and there's thickening agents, and it's easy to make a crappy homemade ink. It's hard to do it well. And after looking at it and going, yeah, it'd be really nifty if I was really bored and had a lot of time. But we can get a decent amount for like $18 Canadian. I'm not going to waste.
You're never going to use that much ink to make it worth it.
It's in terms of it's in terms of homemade ink.
But it would be definitely artisan then.
Oh yeah. And there are people that do it, but to do it well, it's like in the book, ink. Is he talks about making his own walnut gull ink, which is to get gulls, which are nests of the wasps, or not nests, the wasp larvae that are on oak trees, and then you pile them in, you grind them up, and boil and squeeze out if the resultant juice, and he goes into the process. He says he'll probably never do it again. But the nice thing about iron gall ink is that it's a very permanent ink, and it is somewhat corrosive for your steel nibs. So you got to be careful with some of the inks and know what you're doing, or else you'll just ruin a pen. Like my wife just got on this last order, a so-called permanent ink, an archival ink. Which sounds, so it's waterproof, it's resistant to all sorts of things, which sounds lovely, except how do you clean your pen?
Yeah.
Cleaning pens can be a problem even with regular water-soluble inks. I went through this Monday, and the horror.
So, like anything, Oh my gosh. Like anything, you have to take care of your tools
Yep.
in order for the product as well. You
Yep.
can't just and Tamara did say thank you. So
Oh,
say
you're
you're
very
welcome,
welcome, Tamara.
Tamara. Um there was okay, so
Robin
moving
has another
on
question about
to
ink
yeah,
being made
no.
by capturing soot. That is basically carbon ink. I actually have a bottle of carbon ink that's apparently made from industrial soot. Again, it's a messy process if you do it at home, but certainly doable.
Yes, you can. So, well, if keep that because we may need to know how to make ink someday. And what will we do, Brian? We will need you to do that. Now, we're going to move on a little bit. Not that we're not coming back to that, but um, we're Brian. Robin asked, "Do you feel a difference or more of a connection physically handwriting a story rather than typing at a keyboard?"
Oh,
And
very much so. Very much so. And I've always talked about this at length to bore people because it's a really interesting phenomena, at least to me as a writer, when I've had writer's block or I had basically a keyboard block for months and months. I go to a keyboard, I would be at work and I could do what I needed to do for work. But when it came to creating, my mind froze as soon as my fingers touched the key. And I was going nuts because I had words bouncing around inside my head that had to come out. And I found that if I started writing them down, the words would flow because you're using a different part of your brain and you're bypassing other parts in essence. It's also a more visceral thing, almost like a video game in that it's hand-eye coordination. And as Vicky mentioned at the beginning, sometimes your thoughts go faster than you can write and your writing gets messier. And I have historically, like from a young age, being told that my handwriting is crap, and it always has been. But I've relearned it and retaught myself in the past few years after getting into pens, because it forces you to slow down, to be aware. I think that's the proper word. You're more aware of what you're doing. You're more in the moment. You have to be. Especially depending what kind of pen you're using. If it's like a stainless steel dip pen, there's even more hand-eye coordination because if you press too hard, the ink just goes flip. If you don't press hard enough, it doesn't come out. So it's a more hand-eye awareness of how it feels on the paper. So your brain has to do more things. So it can't be focused on why won't the words come out of my head? Well, I'm focusing on this. And when you look over here, well, the words kind of slip out onto the paper that way. So yes, Robin, it's I have file folders full of handwritten notes. Like if I got notebooks scattered throughout the house with pens, mostly fountain pens, but sometimes just pencil. So that any time of the day or night, if I need to write down an idea, because I can guarantee you will not remember. I've had a lot of wonderful ideas that all I remember it was wonderful, but the details gone forever.
some of the other things I've read that is helpful with this is that when you're typing and you want something to go away, you delete it, a word. But if you're writing, you scratch it out, but that word is still there. You may want to use that word. You just weren't sure in that moment. So that idea is still there under the scratch.
Yeah.
And
Well, the other thing you can do is you can write off to the side or write a little line and say, go to part A, and in part A or part 21, you've got some extra notes that you thought about. Sort of like it's a manual version of hypertext or your own personal
right.
World Wide Web.
And you can write in different colored inks.
Mhm.
So to highlight this person's comments or that person's.
And that's why it's important to
comments.
have multiple pens because it can be in multiple inks. Like I've got green ink in a green pen. Boy, that's clever, eh? and I've got red ink and a blue pen, but it's a specific type of pen. So I have like, I don't know, a dozen pens. They're just scattered on the desk. It's in a pile, and I know roughly where the one I want is. And so if I want just a rough note, any pen will do. If I'm editing and I want to express my cruelty to the idiot writer, which is always me, then I'll use a red pen.
Not with red pen, Brian.
Yes.
You
The
can't
red
do that
pen.
to yourself.
Oh,
You
yes.
can't.
Because when you
Also-
get into the editor mindset, the writer is your enemy.
But okay, obviously there are multiple different personalities here. And that's how he gets things done. Speaking of editing, there is also that edit you do from the written word to the typed word. That is like your first editing process in this.
Yeah.
And it really makes you look at that. So you don't have that. Is it saying what I want it to say? You have to actually read it to get it on there. There was also when it talks about pain, doing something like this, creating takes your mind off of that. So it's good for pain management. It's good for many things. Brian, I want to take the practical question from Tamara. Have you found a soap that will get this ink off?
No, because it goes in. Time, and it'll eventually
So do you
come
have
off.
do you
I'm
have
very
special
sorry.
clothes you wear when you're
Gloves, paper towels are your friend. I always forget the gloves, and my wife, like even just now, I've got some ink on my finger, but I've had days when the palms of my hands are like multicolored rainbows of stupidity.
But it makes you an artist. It's like when you wear the shirt with paint all over it with different colors. People know you're a creative person.
It is typically just my hands, Tamara, and it's just time. Give it a couple days and it'll be gone. It does help, however, to have like a squirt bottle or some clean water. Take a rag and wipe your hands right away. That'll get a certain amount of it off right away.
Tamara
And then
is an
over time.
artist in her own right. I've seen some of her work that is very, very nice. So I'm thinking this is a very practical question from her. And I mean, Robin must be into pens as well. So you have one more thing to be asking these questions. Now, oh wait, there's a reboot question.
Oh, yes.
Did you want me to put that up?
Sure.
You can read it out for the people who can't see.
Robin says, do you know of any fountain pens of the computer animated TV show Reboot? There probably were, but it doesn't come to mind. It's been so many years since I've seen it. But it is a great show. Watch it. It will entertain kids, but there's enough subtleties and in jokes that it's great fun for the adults.
Okay. I watched Reboot, but it wasn't a lifelong thing. And you're welcome, Tamara. Robin says creative people have dirty hands sometimes, and that's it. We also, not just the writing, you found an interesting blog on doodling and how this how this will help with creativity in that. Because I know sometimes when I get stuck and I'm writing something, I will just use swirls. Like I will just swirl around for a while. And so the actual act of doodling will... Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. This particular blog, the links are in the blog post I put on my website.
Okay, I just want to plug, and I don't normally do that. Come to Fika with Vicky. Like, follow. You will see information from Brian. You'll know what's coming the next week on the show, and we can fight those algorithms together and get these authors out there. Okay,
Yes,
I'm not a
indeed.
very good social media person, so there's my go. Go ahead, Brian.
And he started doodling, but wanted it to be more mindful, more focused, rather than just random stuff. So he came up with a series of 7 different patterns, basic patterns: swirls, circles, squares, pipes. The more complex one. The pipes ones are similar to like the Irish interleaved artwork, like you see in the Book of Kells. There are whole books on how to draw those Irish shapes. They're very hypnotic. They're very if you have OCD, that's the type of thing you want to be drawing.
Well, I see, and that's one of the things I miss in books is that I have this picture of the Kells, but I don't have it. The Book of Kells here. I don't have it here now. Is all that, I used to love it as a kid. I had a Robinson Crusoe book that around the first letter of the sentence, there would be leaves and it pretend gold leaf and
Celtic borders.
Yes. That looks like a good book.
Yeah, it is. It's a fascinating book, and it has different borders. And
I love that.
Yeah, I got it it's in a used bookstore. Another reason to go to used bookstores, because you find stuff you don't find anywhere else.
No. Even thrift stores and stuff that you're just amazed that you picked up. Brian, Robin would like to know, have you ever thought of drawing illustrations for your books with pencil?
Let me show you how well I can draw, Robin.
And while he's making his stick figure, Brian.
That is the quality of my drawing. I can doodle, not very well, but I can. But I like to recycle old-timey artwork.
But they're beautiful. Although it's becoming more and more difficult to find places that doesn't. Okay, they're public domain, and I know they do the work of the thing, but that doesn't want to charge you for a download.
I have found some sites. I think I did a blog post a year or so ago about that. But if anybody needs to,
because I was looking for a picture of the guy with the quill and that to use in the
something that I do is make my own Christmas cards. If you get into fountain pen inks and calligraphy, doing your own Christmas cards, and there are places that have like old Christmas card illustrations. The people in the Victorian era in Britain were very bent. I mean, you think that people are weird now?
No, people don't. Things don't change. People haven't changed. They were just
very, very funky. Or pictures of kittens. But one thing that I did was Vicky has an example of that.
Yeah, I was going to put all my examples out here, but I have them because they can later.
Thank you, Tamara.
Nag him, Tamara. I put that.
Tamara says, learning to draw is a mindset. Anyone can draw. You just need to find your niche. And I would add to that, put in the time. Put in the damn time, people.
That is.
Because you can't draw the Mona Lisa after 5 minutes.
To do those borders. But one of the reasons we're doing this show is because sometimes you have to slow down. Every moment does not have to produce something different. Like I said,
Robin makes a good point
writing
here.
Cursive. I know Robin's points are always I'm okay, Tamara, you be my friend.
Robin says that was a fantastic drawing of a werewolf, Brian.
I would like to compliment Robin's imagination, because if he could see a werewolf in that, not that I'm picking, it's play, people.
Exactly.
If you're writing, like I was saying, Brian does a lot of things that aside from writing, and he was in the computer development game before he retired. A lot of things in the garden, baking cookies, and all of these things contribute to writing because you're doing something. And when you're writing about those things, you can remember the steps, the feelings, the smell of the cookies coming out of the oven. I'm getting hungry. We better get off this topic.
Because I did bake some scones just before I came on to help build up my strength for this. For this ordeal with Vicky. One thing that if people want to do their own cards or their own chapbooks,
We'll do chapbooks on another thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can get. This is an old time poster, and I modified it. Or this is an old thing there. These are all legally.
So he has, for those who cannot see, he found in the public domain all those old scary ghost and Halloween pictures of the past that if you're a certain age, you remember as a kid, or you find in those books. And those black and white ink etchings, I guess is what you would call them, ink sketches, are like some of the scariest stuff in the world, as far as I'm concerned. They're far more scary because it's like shadowy and
they don't have to be hyper detailed because your mind fills in the blanks. If it's that's where the skill of those sketches are,
and what they don't show.
Yeah, and it's
Tamara, I won't put that out publicly in case that's something you don't want to share, because we're just going to see you as the fantastic artist you are now and not worry about the past.
Yes.
So,
no, but everybody learns. I mean, everybody starts at zero. So I'm not ashamed. Some years ago, I tried acrylic painting, found some good books, and I painted some things, some big, some small. They're not very good, but I don't care. I had one heck of a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about color. It's all about learning new things. You may not use that knowledge, but it all builds. It all fits together, and it gets you appreciating the effort and skill of somebody that can do it well. Like, I think everybody should try painting something. Everybody should try writing something.
And play. We're so stuck with the idea that everything has to be good. And I wasn't ignoring Brian. I was looking up a quote I had looked up for the show, but didn't get written down. And it's by Mr. Rogers, because, of course, Mr. Rogers is very important to us here at Fika. Play is often talked about as if it were a release from serious learning. But for children and adults, because we're always learning, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood and retired people. Anybody who has a moment in between. So if we're so stuck on everything having to be good, we don't want to experiment, we don't want to try, we don't want to make a mess.
There's also the fear of being wrong.
And the fear of being
wrong.
That's
the biggest thing that I personally have to overcome is I don't want to do that because it's going to be bad. And I don't want to be wrong anymore. I spent decades being wrong. But
I get that. But what have you done, Brian? What have you done? Not the bad side where I go, what have you done, Brian? But you.
What have you done this time, Brian?
You went through all the process and the learning and the tech to narrate your own book, and you got it on Audible. And they have a whole list of loops you have to jump through.
Oh, yeah.
You get to the end. You said at the end, I will never do that again. But now you know why.
Yeah.
You know why. You're out in your garden baking, doing photography, sending gifts to your friends, baking cookies. You just go out there and do it. And so as you said very kindly, when I was having one of my tech issues, I shouldn't even mention that because it's because I try new things. And And that is what is wrong. I'm going to say it, people. That is what is wrong with the world. Okay. Everybody's complaining about AI, but they have this idea in their head that everything has to be perfect, and no one can make it perfect except for apparently those Celtic border creators, but except because we're human. So we need to love that human. We need to put Brian in a little box at an artisan fair and say, look at the person who tries new things and does new things. And the very first time I interviewed you in Niagara Falls, you were not big on doing a podcast or an interview. Scary host.
Mean.
Mean. Yes, I am mean to all my guests. That's why they come back time and time again. And you did. And how many shows is it now? And now you're cheating on me and going to do other podcasts. So
a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
He's just, how could I have kept
it?
No, that is the wrong thing.
I am Polly Podcastial.
I am very happy for you, Brian. Still haven't
but it's always scary.
Have you worked on, okay, so Tamara, there's nothing wrong with being wrong. A mistake, being creative is always the start of a mistake makes a new idea. It does. Yep. Some of the greatest things have started from mistakes. And let me tell you, Brian has made a share of those. So
I just want to point out that woodworking is a great hobby because it's because your mistakes can be burnt, and then they never existed.
Well, that's what baking and chocolate making. I mean, that's the best thing for making mistakes.
No, because then you spend all this time, and then your wife looks in and says, "Oh, what have you done?" That's not very good, dear.
So, yeah. See,
although she is very encouraging. I don't want to.
She would have to be. We must sing the praises of Lynn before we sign off today. Lynn, you're a patient person. That's all.
And Robin had a question. Have you worked on any recent projects on your workbench? This past week, no, I've been busy preparing for this show, doing research and putting up a few new things in the background. Now this is important.
Except for
laugh. Have a
Yes.
lot of laughs.
That's right. Do things by hand. Go out there and try new things and laugh, and you will be.
Write that book, publish it, self-edit, self-publish. You'll make mistakes, but that's what the first book is for.
Did
and then
say self-edit. Oh, I know what people are going to be talking about right as group
go
today.
ahead, jump on me and beat me up. With me, make me feel cheap.
But once again, Brian, you split yourself into two different people when you edit, so you will kill the. And sometimes people get too busy with a podcast to finish the book. Tamara, I'm sorry. It will happen, getting other authors out there. So while we're doing this show, I want to make sure that people understand we're not knocking technology. We have a lot of gifts in front of us at this point in time, and it's about using them all and balancing them and finding how they can be the tools for what we want to do. And I think, when I was thinking earlier, we have a lot of witches on here, and they seem to be prolific writers. But as they're writing, they're also creating rituals. They're also making potions and things like that. And I'm wondering if that does help the amount that they write. Because, they're out doing something physically will. It changes up the brain.
I find the most potent potion for writers is whiskey.
Okay, I'm not sure we're allowed to advertise that or not.
That's not a brand name.
Radio.
That's just a gift from the gods.
I'm just okay. Okay, Brian said that. I didn't say that. So, Brian, I'm just going to keep you on till the end. Thank you so much for coming back today. It's not that when I'm having a busy week, I think, oh, I'll just give Brian an idea and he'll just be madly researching it. I'll just take it easy. No, but you're a great support to Fika and you're always
You are.
here. And we appreciate having you. So I want you to know that. As for the
you.
rest of you, I'm going to turn off comments now. If I miss something, I'm
And Tamara
sorry.
is right. It's about her views on woodworking turning into carvings. Yes.
Oh, did I miss? Okay. Hopefully, I have eye doctor's appointment on Friday. So hopefully, I have glasses that will work for next week. And this will be a thing of the past. So, and I won't be missing comments. I know I missed one of Brian's last week and heard about it. So, I try. I really do try. So, until next week, for the rest of you, may your coffee be hot and your stories sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Now I have to figure out how I'm going to